we are lagging because we were a little late to the table in implementing ESG. To make a statement that India's future ready would be a fallacy. Implementing ESG is a big change management program, and it requires a change in mindset, in thought.
Welcome to this episode of Sustainability Karma. I'm your host, Rajiv, Tikoo. Today we have a very special guest with us, Richard Rekhy. He's a former CEO of KPMG India and now holds board positions in various companies. He's a respected authority on corporate governance. Let's welcome Richard Rekhy to the show of Sustainability Karma.
Thank you, Rajiv.
You have been an important thought leader in the corporate governance for last many years now, and you have worked globally and in India also. The discourse and the practices have changed over the years. Are we future ready on corporate governance?
Yeah, Rajiv, I think corporate governance, India was quite ready. We came a long way because I've been involved right from the beginning when corporate governance was first introduced, and we did a lot of work in this area. At that time, we had no go-to place to go. In India, we had to go international to find out good practices. But I think India has come a long way. Mm-hmm. Now, how future ready is India is a question mark. The world is changing too fast. And to make a statement that India's future ready would be a fallacy. But I think it's important to explain certain aspects of corporate governance. Corporate governance today has become a key aspect in a very volatile business environment to navigate the uncertainties. Because today what we have is uncertainty, uncertain. Both things are uncertain. So a leader is got nothing which he can say that I can put my hands on. And what corporate governance helps you do is build resilience, gain stakeholder trust. You move from shareholder to stakeholder, very important, from shareholder to stakeholder, to gain the stakeholder trust and create long-term value. So companies that prioritize corporate governance practices are better equipped to deal with the change as it happens because they are ready. I always say the back office, when it is strong, your front office will do much better. It can grow faster. And good governance in principle. So good governance is not about taking the right decisions. Okay, let me just clarify here. It's about putting the right process in place. Given circumstances, do you take the decision in those circumstances what you feel is the best decision, the best possible decision? History may prove it completely wrong, but I think that is something we should understand. Most corporates are now strengthening their corporate governance. Here, if you see year by year, people are improving it. They are now trying to bring accountability, transparency, rule of law, and equity and inclusiveness has become a big topic actually. Now, how much it gets implemented, but a lot of this has become a big talk, and bringing efficiency and effectiveness into the system. And this has actually been driven more by economics, because if you're not efficient, you're not in the market. Today it's proved. All these new companies have come, the startups, they have come with completely new business models. So what you need is a good framework which helps you build this resilience, transparency, and align with the evolving demands of the global business landscape. So I think that is very important. And today, corporate governance has got synonymous with trust. Trust is at an all-time low today. If you ask me, trust across spectrums is an all-time low. So corporate governance helps you build this long-term value for the stakeholders, tries to bring the trust back on the table. And I think this will be the future of governance as we go. So the companies' ecosystems have shifted their focus from valuation to performance and building an organization of the future. So this is where we are going now, where we reach time will tell.
ESG has become an important corporate governance issue. How would you compare the situation in India vis-a-vis globally?
So India today, as of today, we are lagging behind because we were a little late to the table in implementing ESG. But I think the SEBI and the various regulators have come in and put some norms in, which I'll talk about shortly. But I think, so India is progressing on its reporting. I think the challenge which India has, it still faces in implementing a cohesive and comprehensive ESG regulatory regime. And compared to the more developed countries, US is moving from voluntary to mandatory ESG. We'll talk about the US the new anti thing which has come on ESG later. But I think the US is moving from voluntary to mandatory at the moment. And there's a trend towards ESG disclosures. So how do you actually bring standards and jurisdictions in? So there are global standards, let me tell you. India has also come with their own standard, which in some ways based on the global standard, but it's not comprehensive. It is not all inclusive. So in EU, that a new norm is just now coming. So just to tell you, the EU climate law have brought legally binding targets on emissions, on carbon emissions. They've tried to bring it, and they have said they've already enacted what they called CSRD. But I just read yesterday that they put it on hold. And the European Union, European People's Party has said, put this on hold and don't implement it. So there is a lot of cross thing happening on this. But EU has moved with due diligence directives, and they have asked to identify this basically identifies human rights violations. Human rights has become a big item, actually, by the way, in this whole thing, and environmental impact. So whistleblowing redressals that are needed. Germany has their own supply chain act. Norway has already the Transparency Act. They all deal with the same item: environment, human rights, and disclosure. So these are all hopefully coming together. And EU's got another thing, which is very important, I think. The EU deforestation legislation. So they are saying that if you are in a business which is using products made from the forest, then you have to come, you have to prove that these products do not contribute to deforestation, or what are you doing to create the forest again, or whatever. So India's concern is very basic, I think. We are still on the reporting thing, which we have got now, where we have got, earlier we had 1,000 companies, now we have got 5 years, hopefully all the companies will come. But this is very basic reporting. So this has to go far beyond. I think we have to take the policies from international and say, how do we actually move forward on it? And of course, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs have come with their own national guidelines on responsible business. The problem in India and the challenge we have, we bring regulations, but there is no enforcement. Right. And that becomes a big challenge in, whatever we may want to bring. So, so I think the developments in India are good, but I think we need to follow the GRI, the SASB, and the Task Force on Climate-Related Disclosures, because these frameworks will help India to come with a more comprehensive. So what would India need? So the way I would look at it, when I just give you just bullet points, there needs to be regular audits, inspections, and penalties for non-compliance. If somebody is not complying, what are the penalties are you putting? Encouraging companies to integrate the ESG into corporate governance. You see, you can't have a standalone strategy and say, this is my ESG strategy, which has nothing to do with the company. It will never get its importance. Climate risk assessment, very important, and it's and encouraging companies for ambitious carbon neutrality. But I think, it's also very important to say that while we're talking of corporates to do it, I think the governments also need to come and say, what are they doing towards this end, and not, destroying forests, etc. Because that is putting the negative kind of, and promoting green finance initiatives. India is not a strong bond market, but green bonds have helped internationally, where people have got funding at differential rates, they've got specific funding. I think these things need to come into India, which will help the companies then, because what people have not understood in ESG, there's a huge capital investment required if you want to change capital. And what is the ROI on that? Do we get the return over a period of time? It depends how the companies each do it. And how do they involve everybody, like your employees, your suppliers, your customers, the community at large? And it has to be a mission driven. It has to be driven by the CEO and the board. They have to drive it as a mission and then get it implemented. One thing which people have not realized, implementing ESG is a big change management program. And it requires a change in mindset, in thought, in what we do. It's just not about putting few things here and, implementing some standards. It's a complete mindset change, I think. So if we are able to move this, it's not going to be easy, let me tell you, but hopefully we get there. I'm a positive person.
ESG has been appropriated by E mostly. What do you think about the S and G part of it?
I mean, sometime back, about a year back, economists that ESG is completely finished. There's no ESG because of the S part. Right. Because there was no, and this is global, nothing to do with India, by the way. So this is global. So what is this S part, which you asked? This is a social part. So, and people are struggling with putting norms, standards around this social. How do you measure it? So it's about things like people, human rights, D&I, issues around LGBTQ, age discrimination, working conditions, wages, drinking water, the compensation being paid across an organization where the top level gets this and the workers get a very differentiated compensation. So these are issues that are being suppressed at the boardrooms, if you ask me. They don't want to because they are simmering. But when an issue will happen in a crisis, this will become a tsunami. Because then these issues will blow out of proportion. A journalist, how things get it becomes a crisis then more than anything else. So, however, the G part, most everybody's got their views around it. Governance in different countries are different. So, I think the G part is actually getting taken off in my view. So, so I think good governance ensures good practices. I just want to relate it. It's a very example I've given many times. Let me give it once again. Why do cars have brakes? Cars have brakes so you can drive faster. So if you have good governance, you can move faster in life. So I think that's it. So I think when a company's priorities are balanced across people, planet, and profit, I think we'll be achieving our ESG goals. I mean, it is very clear. I mean, if we move in that kind of direction. But if you ask me, this change cannot be done by one person, one business, one community, one government. It requires everybody's participation. I would say simple thing. People like us, common citizens, how are we living our life? Do we actually bring that consciousness in? We have to save water, we have to do, etc. And how do we enhance our social metrics? So to bring out social metrics, how do we measure it on human rights, diversity? How are we improving on it? I think those are some important things. And we need to strengthen our governance practice. We need to keep this board independence is a big issue today. It keeps coming up all the time. How independent are the independent directors? And how do they get recruited? How are they allowed to speak? How are they allowed to? So executive compensation is a big issue. Anti-corruption measures is a big issue. And it's not only with India, it's even with global companies. And how do you ensure accountability, ethical decision-making? See, today it is no more about being ethically right. It is about being morally right. And I would like to quote Mahatma Gandhi, who says that business without morals is a sin. So, I mean, if we go with these kind of principles, we are talking, and there are many examples. I don't want to now take your time on this. Many examples of where people have not done morally right things, have been punished by the public. They have not used their products. They have moved away from their products because it's about morality. Ethically, you could be right. My law allows me to do this. For example, tax planning, how you do all those, but companies are getting punished for it. So I think investors also need to actively engage in ensuring that the companies in which they invest are following the ESG. I think we will move to a state where finally there are ESG rating agencies, but they will come into big play with like corporate governance. The rating agencies came in. The companies which have got good ESG practices will be rewarded by the capital markets through good valuations, etc.
We see a very strong anti-ESG movement in the US building up.
Yeah.
How is it going to play out in India? What's your sense?
Yeah, so this anti-ESG movement, see, I think it's going to go back and forth. You have European Union on one side trying to bring ESG into it. You've got US, and not whole of US, but some states and some conservative thinking people who have come, because what has happened, all the states which are oil producing, like Texas and all, have taken more adherence to this, because they are saying you're cutting out our revenue, the oil and gas companies, etc., because they're getting so these laws which are prohibiting the ESG factors in the investment decisions. So several states have brought laws and they're dealing with the financial services firm avoiding oil and gas producers. So all those financial services are avoiding, they are actually not letting them participate in their financial services. And the companies to suffer are JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs have been affected by these laws. Because they're not allowed to participate in the municipal bond market in states like Texas. So I'm just saying the more oil producing states. So investment flows, and I do not know whether this relates to this, but investment flows came down into the ESG focused funds. Did it happen because of this, or just because the market was turbulent and people had other places to put it in? But there is impact coming, and it is actually very unfair for countries like India, who are now coming into the growth mode, who are building this, who will get punished for, their products will get banned or anything else. So this is going to be a challenge. I think we have to wait and watch how this gets played out. I think there is going to be a push and see, the only thing which I worry about, will ESG die? The implementation of ESG, because there's European Union having a different view, US having a developing world having a different view, and the developing world is a huge cost to countries like India because we are growing, and these countries have already used this carbon. Now we have to suffer and increase the cost. So there has to be some way in which countries like India get compensated. My view should get compensated. There should be some global kind of incentives given to country. I always believe affirmative action works. I'll give you an example. South Africa, when they moved from the apartheid into this thing, they gave affirmative action. If you appointed black as a CEO, or you got a lot of black people working in your company, you would get government contracts, or you would be eligible to file for government contracts, etc. So I think we need to bring affirmative action. Companies which do a lot on ESG, we should give them some incentives. Similarly, for countries globally, there should be a global fund coming where countries could be compensated.
But
so you can take care of some of this actually.
But I think the clock also seems to be moving backwards simultaneously. There is also anti-affirmative action campaign building up in the US, with even diversity and inclusion getting a backseat now. Another area of concern for countries like India is CBAM now. So what would be your prescription for way forward?
So I don't have a prescription, but I can just try and explain the CBAM, what it is. So this carbon border adjustment mechanism that European Union has brought out, CBAM, is essentially the European Union's new carbon tax. That's the way I see it. It's a new carbon tax designed to be aligned with EU's domestic emission trading systems. You know, how they are trying to work with deforestation, etc. What they're bringing. It's very complex. It has positives and negatives. One of the positives is they're not letting companies just shift their manufacturing out of EU to a third world country or to a developing country to fit into the EU, into the guidelines. So they're saying that is not allowed. So that is, I would say, a positive. And they are trying to create a more level playing field for the European companies who are facing this environment regulation. So because European Union companies have a huge environment, so if you look at it from their point of view, they have a lot of environment regulations they need to follow. So they become cost, not competitive, right? So they are bringing this tax to make it a level playing field. This is this thing. But the issues which come up, there's a increased cost for developing countries like India, because now we'll have to pay that tax. So whether our products will be still competitive. So one will have to see it, and whether this is fairness as the WTO compliance. So I think all these countries will now need to move and say, how do we come with a global standard and not a EU standard, a US standard, a developing world standard? So I think, and also there's a big administrative burden, implementing the CBAM, as you said. And whether the WTO rules are being, are there going to be disputes which are going to come? It's going to create a huge amount of mess. So I think countries will need to sit down and say, how do we actually improve it and work towards it? So, CBAM, in my view, is a tool, but it needs to be implemented fairly and efficiently to achieve what we want to get. So I think there will have to be a lot of changes in it to make it more.
We have a budget coming up very shortly. What would be your thoughts on it from the sustainability point of view?
I hope there is a lot of things for sustainability. I hope there is some incentives given for people who are adopting. I always believe till you don't incentivize, you will not achieve. So I think the budget should have a lot of investments into more investment. India's done a lot on, let's say, on renewable energy, and I think we're one of the. But I think we now need to move away from the main, the fossil fuel power into the renewable energies. So I think there will have to be a lot of investments into EV vehicles and, the more, how actually they are, because there's another anti-lobby which is saying EV vehicles produce more carbon than what other cars produce. So I mean, this discussion is going to go on. Hydrogen green, I think, would be a nice way to go. And I think a lot of investment into hydrogen green budget should put a lot of this thing on it. And it is also Mr. Gadkari's personal project where he's trying to promote this a lot. So I think we should, buying a EV vehicle at a higher cost than a normal car. I mean, some incentive needs to be given there. I think if we want to do it, we should walk the talk.
Finally, what's your message?
Sure. We keep talking the planet is endangered.
Right.
Planet is not endangered. Earlier also these things have happened. Planet has continued to exist. It is humans who are in danger. So I think the humans need to wake up and understand that humans will not exist on this planet. The planet will continue. And also, 2 points I want to, who would have thought the first futuristic city in the world would be in Saudi Arabia, the NEOM. And, so this is the way the world is moving. I mean, I just thought I'd just put this across.
Yeah.
And Bangalore, from where I live in Bangalore. It used to be a city of lakes and gardens, 280 lakes at one point of time, and it's in a water crisis. So I think these are the realities of life that we have to deal with.
Thanks a lot for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv.
We hope you like this program. This program is also live streamed on All India Radio and aired on community radio stations. We look forward to your feedback on our WhatsApp number 9818120554. For participation in this program, write to us at sustainability.karma@gmail.com. You may also connect with us on social media. This podcast is also available on podcast hosting sites. Looking forward to meet you again at the same time next week with a new episode and a new guest. Till then, goodbye from all of us. Sustainability Karma, a podcast series with senior journalist and editor Rajiv Tikoo on sustainable development, sustainability and ESG.